A very simple question with a not so simple answer. Is Superman a god? So I came across a comment on one of my videos and I lost track of which video it was on, but it was basically about how this particular person got upset that I related Superman to being a god. And this idea that they just don't like when people call Superman a god, and a lot of people were relating to this comment. I was kind of shocked because I never thought this was an issue in the first place, and to be honest with you, I don't know why it's an issue. If you think he's a god, he's a god. If you don't, you don't. You move on, you have your own separate opinions, and you go your own separate way. But after looking online and seeing what people have to say about this situation, there are quite a lot of people who don't like to refer to Superman as a god, which is just really, really interesting, because when you look at Superman throughout the ages, the things he can do, the things he has done, and just the classical tropes of his character, they actually do all point to him being a god character. Of course, he is an alien. He comes from a different world somewhere out in the galaxy. That is not necessarily the definition of what a god is, although in simple terms, a god can just be anybody who is higher power than us. I think for a lot of people, when we think of the definition of what a god is, we think of eternal, never-ending, more of an it than a him or a her, has an omnipresence to them, is basically just outside the realm of our understanding. And whereas maybe Superman has certain things about him that share those ideas, Superman, at the end of the day, is more of a humanized character than anything, so I understand maybe not wanting to connect him to being a god, but I'm going to be honest with you here. I will die on this hill. To me, Superman is a god. He certainly is a god-type character, and I'm going to give you my reasonings on why I will always see him that way, and nothing will ever change my mind about it. So just a warning for anybody who is completely against this idea, this video might trigger you, so you might want to stop watching. So the first thing that Superman does that follows the classical god storyline is actually something that a lot of gods in history and mythology have done over time. He uses a human guise to blend in with humanity. Zeus did this, Hermes did this, and a lot of other gods have done this as well. The difference is whereas those gods would take on a human form, what they were doing is they were more so keeping an eye on us. They were learning about us, they were studying us, whereas with Superman, he does it because he actually wants to protect us and help us. For example, in mythology with the Olympian gods, whereas they would take on peasant forms of humans, Superman took on the form of Clark Kent, which he himself actually identifies more as than he ever has a Kryptonian. And it makes sense, he was born and raised here. And even if you don't want to look in real life mythology and history, you can even look at something else that's fiction. Look at Lord of the Rings. Another great example of this is Gandalf the Grey. Whereas he might not be the god of gods, he is in a way the chosen one to the god. He is one of God's top agents, if you will, and that is pretty damn close enough. Gandalf is shown to be older, slow-moving, very thick beard, uses a cane to walk, and what that's good for is it disguises him from the fact that he is this almighty magician. Although going back to Superman, there is one very unique difference between him and the other mythological tropes of gods. Like I did just previously mention, whereas gods hid amongst us to steady us, Clark is hiding amongst us, but wanting to help us. The only life Clark really knew was being a human, was being mortal. It's not until he learned of his honestly true godlike abilities where he decided, I actually now can help people. I can help humanity. And why wouldn't he? He was raised by beautifully loving parents who instilled good things into him as a child. I personally think it even goes deeper than that. When you look at Clark Kent, him as a human, the journalist, the man who wears regular day clothing, that is the man he sees himself as. He is Clark Kent. He does wear glasses. He is a journalist. He has a 9-to-5 job. He lives amongst us. Clark is so used to being raised by humans and living with humans, he sees himself as a human. It is not until he puts on the red and blue suit, it's not until he truly becomes Superman, flying at speeds unfathomable to us and punching at rates that could absolutely decimate planets, where he realizes his true form, his true identity is revealed. He really is just a god who maintains his humanity, and that humanity has been nurtured and instilled into him since he was a baby. If Superman were to ever lose his connection to humanity, or were to never have a connection to humanity in the first place, he would officially become something much more than we could ever understand. He would be much more identified to be a god than he might be today, even though I still do view him as a form of a god. It is because of how humanized the character has become over time that it is hard to see him as anything else other than human. I think that's great, though. It is amazing to be able to have a being of such pure and intense power actually identify with us more than he does not just his own people, but beings like gods. He wants to be amongst us more than anybody, and I think that is a fantastic story for a man who could be identified as so much more. We can see in real life, in fictional stories, higher beings tend to be worshipped. You could bet all the money in the world, and you would win this bet, that if Superman came to Earth, he would absolutely be worshipped as a god, because there is no other way to identify him other than being more than we are. If aliens came to Earth right now, told us who they were, showed us their technology and just their civilization as a whole, and they had things that we just could not process, that is how high their intelligence is, we would 100% be in awe of them. And especially if they weren't here to kill us, there would be a lot of people immediately worshiping them as gods. That is the nature of humanity, searching for something that is a higher power for us, having an answer for anything when we don't have answers at all. And someone as warm and loving as Superman, even if he does not have the answers, he is simply an answer to a higher being than us. Maybe this is a reason why a lot of people don't like it, since a lot of people do seem to have a grudge on Zack Snyder's storytelling. But for me, I love the way that Superman was identified in Batman vs. Superman, especially that montage scene with the Day of the Dead festival when he's dragging the boat in what looked like to be the Arctic or Antarctica, saving the astronauts in the space shuttle, hovering over the people during a flood coming to save them. It really showed Superman as a higher power, and more than anything than that, I personally believe it shows how humanity would react to a being like that. You're gonna be on one side of the spectrum. Either one, you're gonna sit here and say, I knew all this time there was a higher power, there he is. Or two, you're gonna say, I am terrified of this. I can't believe there is a higher power. I never wanted to believe this. He needs to go. And that's how the world reacted to him. And I thought it was a brilliant way of showing how Clark's humanity might not be enough. He might need to truly identify as something more than us. Now, is that the right call or not? Well, that is up to the Clark in question. But what makes Superman Superman, what makes Clark Clark, is that his humanity, even if he is a form of a god, is always intact. And once again, if you don't view him as a god, you don't view him as a god. If you view him as somebody who has godlike powers but isn't literally a god, so be it. That's all up to you. But like I said, I will die on this hill. I personally believe there are more godlike tropes to Superman than there ever have been in a lot of characters in DC or Marvel. Is Superman a literal god as if he was bred from someone in the new gods or the old gods? Someone like Darkseid or the High Father? No, not in that sense, but definitely in the symbolic sense. I think in the form of symbolism, he definitely does have a lot of godship, if you will, qualities. Of course, Superman is not here to preach and to ensure that people are bending the knee to him. What he is here for is to inspire hope and action to do the right thing. But that does not mean there aren't going to be people who don't see him as something more, no matter how hard he tries. And I don't think that's a good or bad thing. It just is. I mean, even gods have a hard time fighting or even stopping Superman because of his insane type of godlike abilities. At the end of the day, I see Superman Clark Kent as a full human who somehow finds a way to be fully divine. But anyways, that's just my opinion. That's how I see the definition of the character. But of course, there are going to be many of us who see this character much differently. But I don't think there's any wrong answer here. I think it's just all depending on how you relate to a character like Superman. But now you know what to do. It is your turn to leave in the comments below what you think of Superman, how you identify him. Is he more of a godlike character to you, or is he simply just an alien? But that's all I got for you on this one, guys. So until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.